Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little more intense. Something that happens 30,000 feet above your head while you're stuck in traffic complaining about your commute. We're talking about what it's really like to be a fighter pilot. Not the Hollywood version with heroic music and perfect landings, but the brutal, unforgiving reality where split-second decisions mean life or death, and your body becomes both your greatest asset and your worst enemy. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just been accepted into fighter pilot training. The good news, you're about to enter one of the most elite professions on Earth. The bad news, the statistics suggest you probably won't make it. And even if you do, the job might just break your body, your mind, or both before you're 35. Chapter 1, The Brutal Awakening of Reality. You wake up at 4:30 a.m., not because you want to, but because, in the military, the day starts when the sun is still hiding. Your alarm isn't a gentle melody or your favorite song. It's a sharp mechanical beep that cuts through your skull like a knife. This isn't a suggestion. This is your life now. But here's the thing. You're not waking up in your comfortable bed at home. You're in a sterile dormitory room, sharing space with someone who snores like a broken engine. And the walls are thin enough to hear every conversation, argument, and breakdown happening around you. Privacy, that's a civilian luxury you left behind. The first shock hits you before your feet touch the floor. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. Yesterday's training left you feeling like you've been hit by a truck, and today's training will be worse. Much worse. You stumble to the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. Your eyes are bloodshot from studying flight manuals until 2 a.m. Your hands are already developing calluses from gripping control sticks, and that's just week 1. You haven't even seen the inside of a fighter jet yet. The shower is ice cold because hot water is rationed, and you have exactly 3 minutes to get clean. 3 minutes. Try timing that at home and see how it feels. The soap is industrial grade, rough enough to strip paint, and it leaves your skin feeling like sandpaper. But you'll learn to be grateful for those 3 minutes, because some days you won't even get that. Breakfast is served at 5 a.m. sharp, not 5:01, not 4:59, exactly 5 a.m. And it's not breakfast as you know it, it's fuel. Bland, nutritionally calculated fuel designed to keep your body functioning at peak performance. The eggs taste like rubber. The coffee could dissolve concrete. The toast has the texture of cardboard. But here's what they don't tell you in the recruitment videos. You'll eat every last bite and be grateful for it. Because in a few hours, you'll be pulling G-forces that will make you question every meal you've ever eaten. And an empty stomach is not an option. As you choke down your breakfast, you notice something unsettling about the dining hall. It's quiet, not peaceful. Quiet, tense, quiet. Everyone is focused, serious, almost grim. These aren't college students joking around over cereal. These are people who know that today's training could wash them out of the program forever. And that's just the morning routine. You haven't even started the real training yet. Chapter 2, The Mathematics of Elimination. Let's talk numbers, because the statistics of fighter pilot training are absolutely brutal. Out of every 1,000 people who apply to become fighter pilots, only about 33 will actually pin on their wings. That's a 97% failure rate. Think about that for a moment. Imagine walking into a room with 999 other people, all convinced they have what it takes. All physically fit, all intelligent, all motivated. Only 33 of you will make it out the other side. But it gets worse. The elimination doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow, methodical culling that stretches over months and sometimes years. First, there's the initial screening. Physical fitness tests that would make Olympic athletes sweat. Vision requirements so strict that a slight astigmatism can end your career before it starts. Psychological evaluations designed to find any crack in your mental armor. Then comes academic screening. You thought college was hard. Fighter pilot training makes your toughest college course look like elementary school. Aerodynamics, meteorology, navigation, weapons, systems, emergency procedures, and you have to master all of it while running on 4 hours of sleep and constant stress. Every test is a potential elimination point. Score below 85% on any exam. Gone. Fail a flight evaluation. Gone. Show any sign of hesitation or uncertainty during a high-stress situation. Gone. The instructors aren't there to help you succeed. They're there to find reasons to eliminate you. Here's what's really terrifying. Some of the smartest, most capable people you'll ever meet will wash out. Guys who graduated from Ivy League schools. Women who could run a marathon backward. People with perfect records and stellar recommendations. The program doesn't care about your past achievements. It only cares about whether you can handle the impossible demands of right now. And the worst part, the people who eliminate you aren't cruel or sadistic. They're doing you a favor. Because if you can't handle the controlled stress of training, you definitely can't handle the uncontrolled chaos of actual combat. The elimination process is designed to be brutal because the job is brutal. There's no participation trophy in aerial combat. There's no second place. There's alive or dead, and the margin for error is measured in milliseconds and inches. So, as you sit in that dining hall, looking around at the serious faces, you're not just seeing your classmates, you're looking at casualties. Most of these people will be gone within 6 months. Some will quit, some will be kicked out. Some will suffer injuries that end their dreams permanently. And the terrifying question that keeps you awake at night: which category will you fall into? Chapter 3. When your body becomes your enemy. Now let's talk about what happens when you finally climb into the cockpit of a training aircraft. You've spent weeks studying, preparing, visualizing this moment. You think you're ready. You're not. The first thing you notice is the space, or rather, the complete lack of it. You're not sitting in a car or even a commercial airplane seat. You're essentially being stuffed into a mechanical coffin wrapped around one of the most powerful engines ever built. Every surface is covered with switches, gauges, and displays. There are more controls in front of you than in the International Space Station. Your instructor straps you in, and immediately you realize you can't move. The harness isn't just tight, it's crushing. Your shoulders are pinned back, your chest is compressed, and your legs are locked in position. This isn't for comfort. This is to keep you alive when the aircraft starts pulling forces that would normally tear your body apart. Then comes the engine start. The sound isn't like anything you've experienced. It's not the gentle hum of a car engine or even the roar of a motorcycle. It's a controlled explosion happening just behind your head, a sound so powerful you feel it in your bones, your teeth, your soul. The entire aircraft vibrates like it's trying to shake itself apart, and then you take off. The acceleration isn't gradual like a commercial flight. It's violent, sudden, overwhelming. In seconds, you're going from 0 to over 200 miles per hour, and your body is not designed for this. Your organs shift. Your vision blurs. Your inner ear, which has spent your entire life keeping you balanced on solid ground, starts screaming in confusion. But that's nothing compared to your first experience with G-forces. When your instructor puts the aircraft into a turn, the world changes. What used to be called up and down become meaningless concepts. Your body, which weighs maybe 180 pounds on the ground, suddenly weighs 900 pounds. Your arms become too heavy to lift. Your head feels like it's filled with concrete. Blood drains from your brain toward your feet, and your vision starts to narrow into a dark tunnel. This is called GILOC, G-force, induced loss of consciousness, and it's every fighter pilot's nightmare. One moment, you're conscious and in control of a $50 million aircraft traveling at the speed of sound. The next moment, you're unconscious, and that aircraft is now an unguided missile. Your body tries to adapt, but adaptation takes time you don't have. You learn to tense your abdominal muscles, to breathe in sharp bursts, to fight your own physiology just to remain conscious. Some days you succeed, some days you don't. And here's the cruel irony. The human body can only handle about 9 Gs before it shuts down. Modern fighter aircraft can pull over 12 Gs. The machine you're trying to fly is literally more capable than the human trying to fly it. Chapter 4. The Reinvention of Fear. You think you know what fear feels like. Maybe you've been in a car accident, or fallen off a ladder, or had a close call with a wild animal. Those are moments of fear, brief, intense, but over quickly. Fighter pilot training teaches you about prolonged, calculated, inescapable fear. Your first solo flight is when it really hits you. Up until now, there's always been an instructor in the back seat, someone who could take control if things went wrong. But now you're alone, 20,000 feet above the earth, traveling at 400 miles per hour, with nothing but your training and your nerves standing between you and a smoking crater in the ground. The aircraft doesn't care about your fears. It responds to your inputs with mechanical precision, whether those inputs are correct or catastrophically wrong. Pull the stick too hard, and you'll black out from G-forces. Push it too far forward, and you'll dive toward the earth faster than you can think. There's no margin for hesitation, no time for second guessing. But here's what's truly terrifying. The fear never really goes away. Even experienced combat pilots, veterans with thousands of flight hours, admit that climbing into a fighter cockpit always carries an edge of controlled terror. You learn to manage it, to channel it, to use it, to sharpen your focus, but it's always there. And then there are the emergencies. Engine failures at 30,000 feet. Electrical systems that die without warning. Landing gear that refuses to extend. Oxygen systems that malfunction, leaving you gasping for breath in the thin air of high altitude. These aren't theoretical scenarios in a textbook. They're Tuesday morning for a fighter pilot. During one training exercise, your engine quits without warning. One moment you're flying straight and level. The next moment you're piloting a 20,000-pound glider with the aerodynamic properties of a brick. Your training kicks in. Emergency checklist, best glide speed, find a suitable landing field. But your hands are shaking, your heart is racing, and a voice in the back of your head is calculating how long it would take to hit the ground. This is where many trainees wash out, not because they can't handle normal flying, but because they can't handle the abnormal situations that define military aviation. When everything is working perfectly, flying a fighter jet is merely difficult. When things start going wrong, and they always go wrong, flying becomes an exercise in controlled panic. The instructors watch your every reaction during these emergency scenarios. They're not just evaluating your technical skills. They're looking for that moment when fear overrides training, when panic clouds judgment, when the stress becomes too much. Because in actual combat, The emergencies will be real, the stakes will be life and death, and there won't be a reset button. Chapter 5: The Physical Price of Speed. Let's talk about what flying at supersonic speeds does to your body. Because the human form wasn't designed for this kind of abuse. Evolution spent millions of years perfecting a creature that could walk upright, use tools, and survive on the African savanna. None of that preparation helps when you're pulling 7Gs in a climbing turn while trying to track a target moving at Mach 2. Your spine takes the worst punishment. Every time the aircraft changes direction, every G-force, every sudden maneuver compresses your vertebrae like an accordion. Fighter pilots are statistically more likely to suffer back problems than any other profession, including construction workers and professional athletes. By age 35, most combat pilots have the spinal wear patterns of a 60-year-old civilian. But the spine is just the beginning. The constant pressure changes, the rapid altitude variations, the repeated exposure to high G-forces, it all adds up to create a catalogue of injuries that sound like a medical textbook. Herniated discs, compressed nerves, joint deterioration, chronic headaches from the constant pressure on blood vessels in your skull. Your inner ear, that delicate organ responsible for balance and spatial orientation, gets particularly abused. The constant spinning, turning, climbing, and diving creates a condition called spatial disorientation, where your inner ear tells you one thing, your eyes tell you another, and your instruments tell you something completely different. Pilots call this the lens, and it's responsible for more aircraft accidents than engine failures. Some mornings you wake up and your body feels like it's been put through a blender. Your neck is stiff from the weight of your helmet during high-G maneuvers. Your legs ache from pressing rudder pedals while fighting G-forces. Your arms are sore from wrestling with a control stick that becomes exponentially heavier as the Gs pile on. And then there's the long-term damage that doesn't show up until later. Hearing loss from years of jet engine noise, despite the best hearing protection available. Eye problems from the constant strain of tracking targets while dealing with sun glare and rapidly changing light conditions. Cognitive issues from repeated exposure to high GI forces, which literally squeeze blood out of your brain. The military has entire medical specialties dedicated to treating the unique injuries that come with high-performance flight. Aerospace, medicine, aviation physiology. Flight surgeons who understand that a fighter pilot's body is essentially a precision instrument that's being used far beyond its design specifications. Chapter 6: The Golden Prison of the Elite. Here's something they don't mention in the recruitment posters. Becoming a fighter pilot doesn't just change your job, it changes your entire identity. You become part of an incredibly exclusive club, but the membership fees are paid in blood, sweat, and years of your life. The fighter pilot community is small, perhaps a few thousand people worldwide at any given time. You'll know most of them by name, by reputation, or by the stories that follow them. It's an intensely competitive environment where your peers are also your rivals, where every mission is evaluated, every mistake catalogued, every success measured against impossible standards. Your social life becomes completely intertwined with your professional life. You'll marry someone who understands the demands of the job, or you won't marry at all. Your friends will be other pilots or people who work in aviation. Your conversations will revolve around aircraft performance, training scenarios, and the endless analysis of aerial tactics. But here's the trap. The job becomes so all-consuming that you lose the ability to do anything else. Your skills are incredibly specialized, but not particularly transferable. You can fly a $50 million aircraft at twice the speed of sound, but those skills don't necessarily help you succeed in the civilian world. The military knows this, and they use it to keep pilots in service. Where else can you go where your unique abilities are valued? What civilian job offers the same level of adrenaline, responsibility, and prestige? You become addicted to the lifestyle, even as it slowly destroys your body and isolates you from the normal world. And then there's the constant pressure to be perfect. Fighter pilots are held to standards that would be impossible in any other profession. A mistake that would be laughed off in a corporate boardroom could be career-ending for a military aviator. A moment of inattention that might cause a fender bender in civilian life could cause a mid-air collision at 400 miles per hour. You live under constant scrutiny. Every flight is recorded, analyzed, and critiqued. Your performance is constantly measured against your peers, and those measurements determine everything from your next assignment to your promotion potential to whether you'll be allowed to continue flying at all. Chapter 7. The mental cost of perfection. The psychological pressure of being a fighter pilot goes far beyond what most people can imagine. You're not just responsible for your own life. You're responsible for multi-million-dollar equipment, for the success of your mission, and often for the lives of people on the ground who are counting on your accuracy and skill. Every decision you make has potential life or death consequences. The target you engage or don't engage, the route you fly, the altitude you maintain, the weapons you select. These aren't abstract choices. They're decisions that can result in people living or dying, including yourself. The mental load is constant and exhausting. You have to maintain situational awareness of your aircraft systems, your position relative to other aircraft, weather conditions, enemy threats, friendly forces, mission objectives, fuel consumption, weapons status, communication requirements, and a dozen other factors, all while traveling at speeds where you cover several football fields every second. Your brain, which evolved to track maybe a dozen objects at walking speed, is now trying to process information at a rate that borders on the superhuman. The cognitive load is so intense that pilots often experience a phenomenon called channelized attention, becoming so focused on one problem that they lose awareness of everything else, sometimes with fatal results. Sleep becomes a luxury you can rarely afford. Training schedules, mission planning, additional duties, and the constant study required to maintain proficiency mean that 12-hour days are considered light. Many pilots routinely work 16-hour days, and during deployment or intensive training periods, those hours can stretch even longer. The sleep you do get is rarely restful. Your mind continues to replay flights, analyze mistakes, and worry about tomorrow's challenges. Many pilots develop chronic insomnia, their brains too wired and alert to properly shut down. The military provides sleep aids, but using them comes with the risk of being grounded if your performance suffers. And then there's the isolation. Very few people understand what you do or the pressures you face. You can't discuss many aspects of your job due to security requirements. The technical complexity of your work makes casual conversation difficult. You become part of a very exclusive club, but that exclusivity comes at the cost of connection with the broader world. Chapter 8. The deadly dance of aerial combat. Training is one thing. Combat is something else entirely. The first time you engage an enemy aircraft, every instinct developed over millions of years of evolution screams at you to run. But running isn't an option when you're traveling at 600 miles per hour, 25,000 feet above the ground, locked in a deadly dance with someone equally trained and equally determined to kill you. Modern air-to-air combat happens at distances and speeds that push human perception to its absolute limits. Engagements begin when aircraft are dozens of miles apart, traveling toward each other at a combined speed of over 1,000 miles per hour. In the time it takes you to blink, the tactical situation can change completely. Your radar screen shows dots and symbols, but each of those dots represents a human being in an aircraft just like yours, with training similar to yours, fighting for their life just as desperately as you are. The abstract tactical problem suddenly becomes intensely personal. Someone is actively trying to kill you, and your only options are to kill them first or die trying. The engagement envelope, the three-dimensional space where combat occurs, is measured in cubic miles, but the margin for error is measured in feet. A mistake in timing, altitude, or angle of attack doesn't just mean losing the engagement. It means losing your life and potentially the lives of people counting on you to complete your mission. Your aircraft becomes an extension of your body, but it's an extension that's being pushed to its absolute limits. You're pulling G-forces that make your vision narrow, your limbs heavy, and your brain struggle to function. At the same time, you're operating radar systems, managing weapons, communicating with other aircraft, monitoring fuel consumption, and trying to predict what your opponent will do next. The stress is so intense that pilots often experience tunnel vision, auditory exclusion, and time distortion during combat. Your body's fight-or-flight response floods your system with adrenaline, which sharpens some senses while dulling others. Heart rates during aerial combat often exceed 180 beats per minute, the level of a sprinter running a race, except your race might last for 30 minutes, and the penalty for losing is death. Chapter 9. When the machines fail. Fighter aircraft are among the most complex machines ever built by humans. They operate in environments that would destroy most vehicles instantly. Extreme temperatures, crushing G-forces, rapid pressure changes, and the constant stress of high-speed flight. Despite incredible engineering and rigorous maintenance, things go wrong. And when they go wrong at 400 miles per hour and 20,000 feet, the consequences are immediate and often fatal. System failures in fighter aircraft don't happen gradually, like a car that starts making noise before it breaks down. They happen instantly and without warning. One moment your aircraft is performing perfectly. The next moment you're dealing with multiple emergency situations simultaneously while trying to keep yourself alive, and your aircraft from becoming a crater in the ground. Engine failures are particularly terrifying because modern fighter engines are essentially controlled explosions producing thousands of pounds of thrust. When they fail, they don't just stop, they can explode, catch fire, or simply tear themselves apart in ways that damage other aircraft systems. You go from having tremendous power available to being the pilot of a very expensive glider. And the physics of high-speed flight mean you don't have much time to figure out your options. Electrical failures can be even worse because modern fighters are essentially computers with wings. When the electrical systems fail, you lose navigation, communication, weapons, radar, and often your primary flight displays. You're suddenly flying blind, deaf, and defenseless while trying to manage whatever other problems caused the electrical failure in the first place. Flight control problems are perhaps the most challenging because they directly affect your ability to control the aircraft. Modern fighters are deliberately designed to be aerodynamically unstable without computer assistance. They're essentially unflyable. When those computers malfunction or when mechanical components in the flight control system break, the aircraft becomes increasingly difficult or impossible to control. The procedures for dealing with these emergencies fill thousands of pages of technical manuals. But in the aircraft, you often have seconds to make decisions that determine whether you live or die. There's no time to consult checklists or call for help. Your training and muscle memory are the only things standing between you and disaster. Chapter 10. The loneliness of command. As you advance in your career, the responsibilities multiply, but the support doesn't necessarily increase proportionally. Senior fighter pilots are expected to be tactical experts, technical specialists, leaders, mentors, and decision makers, often simultaneously and under extreme pressure. You become responsible not just for your own performance, but for the performance of entire squadrons of aircraft and pilots. Every tactical decision you make affects not just your own safety, but the safety of everyone under your command. Every training program you design, every mission you plan, every piece of guidance you provide has the potential to save lives or cost them. The weight of command in military aviation is unlike leadership in almost any other field. Corporate executives might make decisions that affect profits and market share. Military commanders make decisions that affect human lives, national security, and international relations. The stakes are absolute, and there's often no opportunity to revise your decisions once they're implemented. You're expected to maintain proficiency in your primary aircraft while also staying current on tactics, threats, weapon systems, and the constantly evolving nature of aerial warfare. The amount of studying required never decreases. If anything, it increases as you become responsible for understanding not just your own role, but how that role fits into larger strategic and tactical pictures. The isolation becomes more pronounced as you advance. There are fewer people who understand the pressures you face, fewer peers who share your level of responsibility, and fewer opportunities for the casual relationships that help most people maintain their mental health. Your decisions carry more weight, your mistakes have broader consequences, and the margin for error continues to shrink even as the complexity of your responsibilities increases. Chapter 11. The familiar price of vocation. The demands of being a fighter pilot don't end when you leave the aircraft. The job follows you home, affects your relationships, and shapes every aspect of your personal life in ways that few other careers do. Military families face unique challenges, but fighter pilot families face additional stresses that stem from the high-risk, high-demand nature of the profession. The training schedules are unpredictable and inflexible. Deployments can last for months and often come with little advance notice. The security requirements of the job mean that many aspects of your work life can't be shared with family members. Your spouse, if you have one, essentially becomes a single parent whenever you're training, deployed, or dealing with the extended work hours that are standard in military aviation. They manage the household, care for children, handle emergencies, and maintain family relationships while dealing with the constant stress of knowing that your job involves significant physical risk every day. Children of fighter pilots often struggle with the frequent moves, the absent parent, and the underlying tension that comes from knowing that their parent has a dangerous job. They learn not to ask too many questions about what you do at work, not because the work is secret, but because the honest answers would be too frightening for children to process. The divorce rate among military aviators is significantly higher than in the general population, and it's not difficult to understand why. The job demands total commitment, mental, physical, and emotional. It's difficult to maintain intimate relationships when your primary relationship is with your aircraft, your squadron, and your mission. Even when you're physically present, you're often mentally absent, still processing the day's flights, planning tomorrow's missions, or studying the technical materials that are essential for maintaining your qualifications. Family events get missed because of training requirements. Vacations get cancelled because of operational demands. Important family decisions get made without you because you're deployed halfway around the world. Chapter 12. The programmed obsolescence of the body. Fighter pilots have expiration dates, though no one likes to talk about it directly. The human body simply can't withstand the physical demands of high performance military aviation indefinitely. The accumulated damage from G-forces, the wear and tear on joints and spine, the degradation of vision and hearing, and the cognitive effects of prolonged stress all combine to create a profession with a built-in shelf life. Most fighter pilots reach their physical peak in their late 20s or early 30s. After that, it's a gradual decline punctuated by specific failures that can end a career suddenly. Your vision might degrade just enough to disqualify you from flying certain aircraft. Your back might suffer enough damage that you can no longer handle high-G maneuvers. Your reaction times might slow just slightly, but in a profession where milliseconds matter, slightly is too much. The military has mandatory retirement ages for pilots, but many don't make it that far. Medical disqualifications, often called DNIF duty, not including flying, become more common as pilots age. What starts as temporary restrictions for minor injuries often becomes permanent limitations that effectively end flying careers. The psychological transition from active flying to grounded duties is often devastating for career pilots. Your entire identity, your sense of worth, your understanding of your place in the world has been built around your ability to fly high-performance aircraft. When that ability is taken away, many pilots experience what can only be described as an identity crisis. The skills that make someone an excellent fighter pilot, the ability to make instant decisions under extreme stress, the comfort with risk, the need for constant stimulation and challenge, don't necessarily translate well to desk jobs or civilian careers. Many former military pilots struggle with the transition to civilian life, finding that jobs in the regular world feel mundane, slow-paced, and unsatisfying after the intensity of military aviation. Chapter 13. The invisible weight of secrecy. Much of what fighter pilots do is classified, creating an additional layer of stress and isolation that affects every aspect of their lives. You become the keeper of secrets that you can never share, even with the people closest to you. The capabilities of your aircraft, the tactics you employ, the missions you fly, the threats you face, all of this becomes locked away in your mind, creating a barrier between your professional and personal lives. This secrecy extends beyond just not being able to talk about your work at cocktail parties. It affects your ability to process traumatic experiences, to seek help for stress-related problems, and to maintain normal relationships. When something goes wrong, and things do go wrong regularly, you often can't discuss it with anyone outside your immediate professional circle. The security clearances required for military aviation create their own pressures. Your financial life, your personal relationships, your travel, even your associations with certain people or organizations become subject to government scrutiny. Background investigations dig into every aspect of your life, and maintaining a security clearance requires ongoing vigilance about your behavior, both on and off duty. Foreign travel becomes complicated or impossible. Social media use is restricted. Even casual friendships with foreign nationals can create security concerns. You learn to live a carefully circumscribed life where every decision is filtered through the lens of security requirements and operational considerations. The psychological burden of carrying classified information is real and measurable. Studies of people with security clearances show higher rates of stress-related disorders, sleep problems, and relationship difficulties. The human mind isn't designed to compartmentalize information to the degree required by high-level security clearances, and the effort of maintaining those compartments takes a constant mental toll. Chapter 14. The Paradox of Advanced Technology. Modern fighter aircraft are technological marvels that can perform feats that seem to defy physics. They can accelerate from 0 to supersonic speeds in seconds, change direction instantaneously, and deliver weapons with precision measured in feet from distances measured in miles. But this technological sophistication comes with its own unique challenges and stresses. The more advanced the aircraft, the more complex the systems that pilots must master. Modern fighters have millions of lines of software code, hundreds of different switches and controls, and display systems that can present information in dozens of different configurations. Learning to operate these systems proficiently takes years, and maintaining that proficiency requires constant study and practice. The information flow in a modern fighter cockpit during combat operations can be overwhelming. Radar displays show dozens of targets. Communication systems carry multiple radio conversations simultaneously. Navigation systems provide constant updates. Weapons systems require monitoring and management. And defensive systems alert you to various threats, all while you're traveling at speeds where the tactical situation changes every few seconds. The human-machine interface in fighter aircraft pushes the boundaries of what pilots can reasonably be expected to handle. The aircraft can process and present information faster than humans can absorb and act on it. This creates a constant pressure to process information more quickly, make decisions faster, and execute actions more precisely than human beings are naturally capable of doing. Technology also creates dependencies that can become vulnerabilities. When all of your navigation is done by GPS, what happens when the GPS fails? When your primary flight displays are computer-generated, what happens when the computers malfunction? When your aircraft's stability depends on flight control computers, what happens when those computers can't keep up with the inputs they're receiving? The irony is that as aircraft become more capable, they also become more demanding of their pilots. The technology doesn't make flying easier, it makes it faster, more complex, and more dependent on split-second decision-making. The margin for error decreases even as the consequences of error become more severe. Chapter 15. The Culture of Controlled Risk. Fighter pilot culture is built around the concept of calculated risk-taking. Every flight involves risks that would be completely unacceptable in civilian aviation. The challenge is learning to assess and manage those risks rather than eliminate them entirely, because eliminating risk would also eliminate the mission effectiveness that military aviation requires. This culture of controlled risk-taking affects every aspect of how fighter pilots think and behave. Decision-making processes that seem reckless to outsiders are actually based on careful calculation of probabilities, potential outcomes, and acceptable losses. What looks like machismo or thrill-seeking is often the result of professional training, designed to enable effective operation in high-risk environments. But living in this culture takes a psychological toll. When your professional life involves regularly accepting risks that most people would find terrifying, it can be difficult to readjust your risk tolerance for civilian activities. Many fighter pilots struggle with what civilians consider normal, everyday caution, finding it excessive or paralyzing. The culture also creates pressure to minimize or dismiss risks that would concern most people. Admitting fear, expressing concerns about safety, or questioning the wisdom of a particular course of action can be seen as weakness or lack of commitment. This can lead to situations where legitimate safety concerns are ignored or minimized in the interest of maintaining professional credibility. The military aviation community has developed elaborate rituals and traditions around risk management, many of which involve dark humor, fatalistic attitudes, and the kind of gallows humor that people use to cope with regularly facing their own mortality. These coping mechanisms are psychologically necessary, but they can also create barriers between military aviators and the civilian world. Chapter 16: The Hidden Cost of Precision. Fighter pilots are expected to perform with a level of precision that would be impossible to maintain in almost any other profession. Weapons delivery accuracy is measured in feet. Navigation timing is critical to the second. Formation flying tolerances are measured in inches. This demand for precision creates psychological pressures that accumulate over time and can lead to perfectionism that becomes counterproductive. The standards for fighter pilot performance leave no room for good enough or close enough. Either you hit the target or you don't. Either you complete the mission or you don't. Either you maintain formation, position, or you don't. This binary approach to performance evaluation can create anxiety disorders, depression, and other stress-related mental health issues. The physical demands of maintaining this precision are also significant. Hand-eye coordination must be maintained at levels that most people achieve only briefly during peak athletic performance. Reaction times must be consistently faster than normal human averages. Spatial awareness must be maintained in 3 dimensions while dealing with rapidly changing conditions and multiple competing priorities. The mental fatigue from maintaining this level of precision is cumulative and often underestimated. After hours of flying where every control input must be exact, where every decision must be correct, where every action must be timed perfectly, pilots often experience a form of cognitive exhaustion that can take days to recover from. This demand for precision also extends to ground duties, briefings, planning, and paperwork. Military aviation operates on the principle that attention to detail in all aspects of the job is essential for safety and mission success. There are no minor mistakes in fighter aviation, only mistakes that haven't killed anyone yet. The psychological pressure of maintaining this level of precision day after day, flight after flight, year after year, is something that most people simply cannot sustain. It requires a level of mental discipline that borders on the obsessive. And many pilots develop anxiety disorders or perfectionist tendencies that affect their personal lives long after they stop flying. Chapter 17: The Illusion of Control. One of the most psychologically challenging aspects of being a fighter pilot is learning to operate effectively in situations where you have far less control than you think you do. Fighter aircraft operate in a 3-dimensional environment where weather, mechanical failures, enemy actions, and simple physics can instantly turn a routine training flight into a life-or-death emergency. Weather doesn't respect your mission timeline or your personal schedule. A thunderstorm can ground an entire squadron for hours or days. Fog can make landing impossible. Wind shear can make takeoff dangerous or impossible. Ice can form on your aircraft faster than you can react to it. You learn to work around weather, but you never learn to control it. Mechanical systems fail without warning and often without obvious cause. The most sophisticated aircraft in the world are still machines built by humans, maintained by humans, and operated in conditions that push every component to its limits. Redundancy and backup systems help, but they don't eliminate the fundamental reality that complex machines break down, often at the worst possible moments. Enemy actions, when you encounter them, are by definition unpredictable. The entire purpose of combat is to do something that your opponent doesn't expect, which means that your opponent is actively working to surprise you, confuse you, and counter whatever tactics you employ. No amount of training can prepare you for every possible scenario because your enemies are also trained, motivated, and creative. Even your own aircraft can work against you. Modern fighters are designed to be aerodynamically unstable because this makes them more maneuverable in combat. But it also means that without constant computer assistance, the aircraft will literally fly itself into the ground. When those computers malfunction, when sensors provide incorrect information, or when the aircraft systems don't respond as expected, you can find yourself fighting your own aircraft for control. The illusion of control becomes dangerous when pilots believe they can overcome these limitations through skill, training, or force of will. The most experienced pilots are often the ones who understand that their control is limited and that survival often depends more on recognizing when you're approaching the limits of that control than on trying to push beyond those limits. Chapter 18. The Dilemma of Professional Identity. Being a fighter pilot isn't just a job, it becomes your entire identity in ways that few other professions do. This creates unique psychological challenges when that identity is threatened, either by career changes, medical issues, or the simple passage of time. From the moment you begin training, everything about your self-worth becomes tied to your performance as a pilot. Your value as a person, your standing in your community, your sense of purpose and meaning, all of these become inseparable from your ability to fly high-performance aircraft. This can create a healthy sense of motivation and pride, but it can also create vulnerabilities when that ability is threatened. Career progression in military aviation is often tied to flying performance in ways that create additional pressure. Promotions, choice assignments, and professional opportunities are often directly linked to your reputation as a pilot. This means that every flight becomes not just a professional responsibility, but a career evaluation, creating stress that compounds over time. The exclusivity of the fighter pilot community reinforces this identity fusion. You become part of a very select group of people who share experiences that most humans will never have. This creates strong bonds within the community, but can also create a sense of separation from people outside the community. Your shared experiences with other pilots become more meaningful than your experiences with civilians, including family members. When pilots can no longer fly due to medical issues, career changes, or retirement, the identity crisis can be severe. Many former pilots struggle with depression, anxiety, and a sense of purposelessness that stems from losing not just their job, but their entire sense of who they are as people. The military has programs designed to help with career transitions, but these programs often underestimate the psychological impact of losing an identity that has been central to someone's sense of self for decades. It's not just about finding a new job. It's about reconstructing your understanding of your own value and purpose as a human being. Chapter 19. The Neurological Cost of Extreme Speed. The human brain wasn't designed to process information at the speeds required for modern aerial combat. The cognitive demands of flying high-performance aircraft create neurological stress that can have long-term effects on brain function and mental health. During high-speed flight, your brain must process visual information at rates that approach the limits of human perception. Objects on the ground blur past faster than your conscious mind can identify them. Other aircraft approach and pass at relative speeds that make split-second recognition and decision-making essential for survival. This constant high-speed information processing creates a form of mental fatigue that can take hours or days to recover from. The G-forces that fighter pilots regularly experience have direct effects on brain function. When blood flow to the brain is restricted by high G-forces, cognitive function deteriorates rapidly. Pilots learn to recognize the early signs of G-induced cognitive impairment, but the repeated exposure to these forces can have cumulative effects on brain health over time. Sleep deprivation, which is endemic in military aviation due to irregular schedules and high operational tempo, compounds these neurological stresses. The combination of high cognitive demand, physical stress, and inadequate sleep creates conditions that research has linked to accelerated cognitive aging, and increased risk of neurodegenerative diseases. Many experienced pilots report changes in their ability to concentrate, remember details, or process complex information as they age. While some of this is normal aging, studies suggest that the unique stresses of military aviation may accelerate certain types of cognitive decline. The constant hypervigilance required for safe flight operations also takes a neurological toll. Fighter pilots must maintain a state of alertness that would be exhausting for most people to sustain for even short periods. Maintaining this level of vigilance for entire careers can lead to chronic stress responses that affect sleep, mood, and general mental health. Chapter 20. The emotional economy of risk. Living with constant risk changes how you experience and process emotions. Fighter pilots develop psychological coping mechanisms that help them function effectively in higher risk environments. But these same mechanisms can create problems in low-risk civilian situations. The adrenaline response that helps pilots perform under extreme stress can become addictive. Many pilots find that civilian activities feel boring or understimulating after years of high adrenaline flying. This can lead to risk-seeking behavior in personal life, relationship problems, and difficulty adjusting to retirement or civilian careers. The emotional numbing that helps pilots cope with the stress of combat and training can also interfere with their ability to form and maintain intimate relationships. When your professional life requires you to suppress fear, anxiety, and other negative emotions, it can become difficult to access positive emotions like joy, affection, and contentment in your personal life. Many pilots develop what psychologists call emotional compartmentalization, the ability to separate their emotional responses from their professional duties. This is essential for effective performance under stress, but it can become a habitual response that interferes with emotional intimacy and personal relationships. The constant awareness of mortality that comes with high-risk flying can lead to either fatalistic attitudes or hypervigilance about safety in civilian life. Some pilots become reckless in their personal lives, feeling that civilian risks are insignificant compared to the risks they face professionally. Others become overly cautious, seeing potential dangers in everyday activities that most people take for granted. The social isolation that comes with having experiences that most people can't understand or relate to can lead to loneliness and depression. When your most meaningful experiences can't be shared with people outside your professional community, it becomes difficult to maintain relationships with family members, friends, and romantic partners who don't share your background. Chapter 21. The paradox of infinite preparation. Fighter pilot training never really ends. The technology changes, the threats evolve, the tactics adapt, and the pilots must continuously update their knowledge and skills to remain effective. This creates a cycle of perpetual learning that can be intellectually stimulating but also psychologically exhausting. Every new aircraft system requires months or years of additional training. New weapons require new tactics. New threats require new countermeasures. What you learned 5 years ago may be obsolete today, and what you learn today may be outdated by the time you deploy. This constant need for retraining and recertification means that fighter pilots are essentially professional students throughout their entire careers. The volume of technical information that pilots must master and maintain is staggering. Aircraft systems manuals run to thousands of pages. Tactical publications are constantly updated. Threat assessments change regularly. Emergency procedures must be memorized to the point where they become automatic responses. The intellectual burden of staying current on all of this information is something that most people would find overwhelming. But here's the paradox. No amount of training can prepare you for every possible situation you might encounter. Combat is inherently unpredictable, and enemies are specifically trying to do things you haven't trained for. This means that all of the preparation, all of the study, all of the practice might not be enough when you need it most. This creates a psychological tension between the need to prepare thoroughly and the knowledge that perfect preparation is impossible. Many pilots develop anxiety about their level of preparation, constantly worrying that there's something important they haven't learned or practiced enough. Others develop a fatalistic attitude, accepting that preparation can only go so far and that luck will play a significant role in survival. The military tries to balance this by focusing on fundamental skills and decision-making processes, rather than trying to prepare for every specific scenario. But this approach requires pilots to be comfortable with uncertainty, to make decisions based on incomplete information, and to adapt quickly to situations they've never encountered before. Chapter 22: The Tyranny of Youth. Fighter aviation is a young person's game, and everyone in the profession knows it. The physical and cognitive demands of high-performance flight mean that pilots typically reach their peak effectiveness in their late 20s or early 30s, after which it's a gradual decline toward inevitable medical retirement. This creates unique career pressures that don't exist in most other professions. Instead of gaining experience and expertise over time, fighter pilots face the constant awareness that their most important professional asset, their ability to fly, is steadily deteriorating. Every year brings slightly slower reaction times, slightly reduced G tolerance, slightly degraded vision and hearing. The military has mandatory retirement ages for pilots, but many don't make it that far. Medical disqualifications become increasingly common as pilots age. What starts as minor restrictions, no night flying, no high-G maneuvers, no solo flights, often progresses to complete grounding. The transition from being a highly skilled professional to being medically retired can happen very quickly and without much warning. This creates a constant underlying stress about aging that affects career planning, personal relationships, and psychological well-being. Unlike most professions, where experience and expertise can compensate for physical decline, fighter aviation demands peak physical and cognitive performance, regardless of experience level. Many pilots struggle with the knowledge that their careers will probably end not because they choose to retire, but because their bodies can no longer handle the demands of the job. This can lead to denial about physical limitations, reluctance to report medical issues, and anxiety about routine medical examinations that could end their flying careers. The financial implications of forced early retirement compound these stresses. Military pensions are based on length of service, so pilots who are medically retired early often face significant financial hardship. The specialized skills that make someone an excellent fighter pilot don't necessarily translate to high-paying civilian careers, especially for pilots who are forced to retire due to medical issues. Chapter 23: The Personal War Machine. Every fighter pilot eventually comes to understand that they are not just operating a weapons system, they have become part of one. The aircraft, the pilot, and the weapons form an integrated system designed for one purpose: to destroy targets efficiently and survive the attempt. This realization can be psychologically challenging for people who entered the profession thinking of themselves as aviators rather than weapons. The training progressively desensitizes pilots to the reality of what their aircraft are designed to do. Early training focuses on basic flight skills, navigation, and aircraft systems. Weapons training is introduced gradually, often in abstract terms that focus on technical procedures rather than the practical effects of the weapons being employed. But eventually, every combat pilot must confront the fact that their job is to kill people and destroy things. The sophisticated technology, the precise procedures, the careful planning, all of this is in service of delivering weapons to targets that may include human beings. This realization can create cognitive dissonance, especially for pilots who see themselves as essentially peaceful people who happen to fly military aircraft. The psychological preparation for combat involves learning to compartmentalize the human cost of military operations. Targets become threats or assets rather than people. Missions become technical problems to be solved rather than acts of violence. This mental distancing is necessary for effective performance, but it can also create psychological issues that persist long after military service ends. Some pilots find that they cannot effectively compartmentalize the reality of their role, leading to moral injury, anxiety, and depression. Others compartmentalize so effectively that they struggle to reconnect with their empathy and emotional responses in civilian life. The psychological training that makes someone an effective combat pilot can interfere with their ability to function as a civilian. Chapter 24. The price of elite performance. Being a fighter pilot means accepting that you will be held to standards that most people would consider unrealistic or unfair. The margin for error is essentially zero, the consequences of mistakes are often fatal, and the expectation is that you will perform flawlessly under conditions that would overwhelm most humans. This pressure for perfect performance creates psychological stress that compounds over time. Every flight is evaluated, every mistake is analyzed, and every shortcoming is documented. Your professional reputation is built on a foundation of near-perfect performance in extremely challenging conditions, and maintaining that reputation requires constant vigilance and effort. The competition within the fighter pilot community is intense and never-ending. You're not just competing against external threats. You're competing against your peers for choice assignments, promotions, and the opportunity to continue flying. This internal competition can create relationships that are simultaneously collaborative and adversarial, where your closest colleagues are also your primary rivals. The psychological toll of maintaining elite performance levels affects every aspect of life. The perfectionism required for professional success can make it difficult to accept imperfection in personal relationships. The competitive drive that makes someone an effective fighter pilot can make them difficult to live with as a spouse or parent. Many pilots develop anxiety disorders related to performance pressure. The fear of making a mistake that could end their career or cost lives creates a constant state of stress that can be difficult to manage. Some pilots cope by becoming compulsive about preparation and training, spending excessive amounts of time studying and practicing. Others cope by developing fatalistic attitudes, accepting that mistakes are inevitable and focusing on managing the consequences rather than preventing the errors. Chapter 25. The brutal truth about survival. Here's the reality that military recruiters don't emphasize in their presentations. Being a fighter pilot is statistically one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, even during peacetime. The combination of high-speed flight, complex machinery, extreme operating conditions, and split-second decision-making creates an environment where fatal accidents are not unusual occurrences but expected probabilities. Military aviation accident rates are measured not in accidents per million miles flown, like commercial aviation, but in accidents per 1,000 hours or per 100,000 flight hours, even with all the safety equipment, training, and procedures. Fighter pilots die in training accidents at rates that would be considered unacceptable in almost any other profession. The statistics are sobering. Military pilots are significantly more likely to die in aircraft accidents than they are to die in combat. The peacetime training that's necessary to maintain combat readiness kills more pilots than actual combat operations. This creates a grim irony where the preparation for war is often more dangerous than the war itself. These aren't abstract statistics when you're actually in the profession. Over the course of a typical career, most fighter pilots will personally know multiple colleagues who died in aircraft accidents. The military aviation community is small enough that deaths affect everyone, and experienced pilots often have stories about friends and mentors who died in crashes during routine training flights. The psychological impact of this constant exposure to mortality is significant. Pilots develop coping mechanisms that range from dark humor to fatalistic acceptance, but the awareness of risk is always present. Every pre-flight briefing includes discussions of emergency procedures. Every flight ends with a debrief that analyzes what went right and what could have gone wrong. Living with this level of risk requires a fundamental acceptance of mortality that most people never develop. Fighter pilots learn to live with the knowledge that each flight could be their last, not as a morbid obsession, but as a practical reality that affects how they approach their professional and personal lives. Chapter 26. The economic reality of the vocation. While the prestige of being a fighter pilot is considerable, the financial reality is often disappointing. Military salaries are modest compared to civilian careers requiring similar levels of education, training, and responsibility. The specialized skills that make someone an excellent fighter pilot don't necessarily translate to high-paying civilian careers. The military provides housing, healthcare, and other benefits that supplement base salary. But these benefits come with restrictions and obligations that limit personal freedom. You can't choose where you live, when you move, or how long you stay in any particular location. Your housing is assigned based on military needs rather than personal preferences. Career advancement in the military is based on a rigid promotion system that moves slowly and has limited positions available at higher ranks. Unlike civilian careers, where exceptional performance can lead to rapid advancement, military promotion is largely based on time in service and the availability of positions at higher ranks. The opportunity costs of a military aviation career are significant. The years spent in training and military service are years not spent building civilian careers, developing business relationships, or accumulating assets. By the time military pilots retire or transition to civilian careers, their civilian peers have often achieved higher levels of professional and financial success. Retirement from military service often comes earlier than in civilian careers, but military pensions alone are rarely sufficient to maintain middle-class lifestyles without additional income. Many former military pilots find that they need to pursue civilian careers after retirement, but their specialized military skills don't necessarily command high civilian salaries. The financial sacrifices required for a military aviation career are something that many people don't fully understand until they're committed to the profession. The combination of modest salaries, limited career choices, and early retirement can create financial stress that persists throughout and beyond military service. Chapter 27. The lasting legacy of the extreme. The experience of being a fighter pilot changes you in ways that persist long after you stop flying. The cognitive patterns, emotional responses, and risk assessment skills that you develop to survive in high-performance aviation become permanent parts of your personality, affecting how you approach challenges, relationships, and opportunities throughout your life. Former fighter pilots often struggle with civilian careers that seem boring or understimulating after years of high adrenaline flying. The decision-making processes that serve you well in aerial combat, rapid assessment, decisive action, acceptance of higher risk situations don't necessarily translate well to corporate environments where consensus building and careful deliberation are valued. The emotional compartmentalization that's essential for combat effectiveness can interfere with personal relationships long after military service ends. Many former pilots find it difficult to access and express emotions in ways that support intimate relationships. The stoicism that helps you cope with life and death stress can make you seem emotionally unavailable to family members and friends. The physical effects of military aviation also persist after retirement. The accumulated damage from G-forces, the wear and tear on joints and spine, and the effects of stress on cardiovascular health often create medical issues that affect quality of life for decades after active duty ends. But there are also positive legacies. The confidence that comes from successfully handling extreme challenges can serve you well in many civilian situations. The ability to remain calm under pressure, to make decisions with incomplete information, and to accept personal responsibility for outcomes are valuable skills in any profession. The perspective that comes from regularly confronting mortality can help former pilots appreciate life in ways that many people never develop, having faced genuine life and death situations. Many former fighter pilots find that they're less worried about everyday problems and more focused on what really matters in life. Chapter 28. The final question of aptitude. So, could you survive as a fighter pilot? The honest answer is probably not, and that's not an insult to your intelligence, courage, or character. It's simply recognition that the combination of physical, intellectual, and psychological demands required for military aviation eliminates most people, including many who are successful in other challenging professions. The physical requirements alone disqualify the majority of the population. Perfect or correctable vision, excellent cardiovascular fitness, normal blood pressure, good hearing, no history of serious injuries or medical conditions. These requirements eliminate people who are otherwise highly capable and motivated. The intellectual demands are equally selective. You need to be able to learn complex technical information quickly, retain vast amounts of detail, make rapid calculations under stress, and maintain situational awareness in three-dimensional space while processing information from multiple sources simultaneously. The psychological requirements may be the most selective of all. You need to be comfortable with risk levels that most people would find terrifying, able to maintain peak performance under extreme stress, capable of making life and death decisions with incomplete information, and psychologically resilient enough to cope with the constant pressure of potential failure. Even if you meet all of these requirements, success isn't guaranteed. The training pipeline eliminates people who seem perfectly capable of becoming fighter pilots. Sometimes it's a matter of timing, a moment of hesitation, a small mistake, a day when you're not performing at your absolute best. Sometimes it's a matter of fit. You might have all the required capabilities, but not in the specific combination required for military aviation. And even if you successfully complete training and become a qualified fighter pilot, maintaining that qualification throughout a career requires constant effort, continuous learning, and the physical and psychological resilience to handle years of extreme demands on your mind and body. Conclusion: the true cost of the elite. Tonight, we've peeled back the layers of one of the most elite and demanding professions on Earth. We've looked beyond the Hollywood glamour and recruitment poster heroics to examine what it really costs physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually to become and remain a fighter pilot. The reality is harsh. Most people simply don't have the combination of physical capabilities, intellectual capacity, and psychological resilience required to succeed in military aviation. And even those who do succeed pay a price that extends far beyond their military careers, affecting their health, their relationships, and their ability to adapt to civilian life. But here's what's remarkable about the people who do succeed. They understand these costs and accept them willingly. They recognize that the demands are extreme, the risks are real, and the sacrifices are significant. They choose to pursue this profession not because it's easy or comfortable, but because it offers something that few other careers can provide: the opportunity to operate at the absolute limits of human capability. Fighter pilots represent the extreme edge of human performance, pushing against the boundaries of what's physically and mentally possible. They accept risks that most of us can't even imagine, master technologies that border on science fiction, and make split-second decisions that can affect the course of history. The price they pay for this elite status is measured in damaged bodies, strained relationships, financial sacrifices, and the constant stress of performing at superhuman levels. It's a price that most of us are not willing or able to pay, and that's perfectly reasonable. As you drift off to sleep tonight in your comfortable bed, in your climate-controlled room, without the weight of tomorrow's life and death decisions pressing on your mind, take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary people who willingly sacrifice comfort, safety, and normal life to master the most demanding profession on earth. They do it not for glory or recognition, but because someone has to. Because freedom isn't free, and security isn't automatic, and the peaceful sleep you're about to enjoy is protected by people who gave up their own peace to ensure yours. The next time you see a fighter jet streak across the sky, remember that inside that machine is a human being who has accepted challenges that would break most of us, who has trained to standards that seem impossible, and who continues to push the boundaries of human capability every single day. You probably wouldn't last a day as a fighter pilot. Neither would most of us. And that's exactly why the few who can are so remarkable, and why their sacrifice deserves our respect, our gratitude, and our understanding of just how much it really costs to earn those wings. Sweet dreams, and remember, while you sleep safely, someone is up there in the darkness, traveling at twice the speed of sound, keeping watch over the world below.